We are live.
I call this hearing of the Archaeological Review Committee, March 17, 2022 to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Eck.
I am here in spirit.
Thank you. Member Pierce.
Here.
Member Wands.
Excused.
She's excused.
She's here, but we won't be able to hear her. Should I count her as in attendance?
I think she's just gonna bail, but
Okay. And Member Zinn.
here.
The motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The first thing to consider is the approval of agenda. Anyone have anything to offer about the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the agenda as submitted.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
All right, thank you. Moving on to approval of minutes for the 3rd of March, 2022. Thank everyone for getting the minutes to us on such short notice. Committee, anything to offer about the minutes? Member Zinn.
I have nothing to offer, Chair.
All right. Member Pierce.
Yes, I have a few corrections. On the bottom of page 3, the staff report for case 4921 does not match that case. I believe it's a cut and paste from one of the other cases.
Oops.
You'll notice 4921 is Paleo West for PNM. Staff report is OAS for City of Santa Fe Water Division. So
Yes,
there's
I
error on
believe the staff report reference for the first 2 items has been reversed.
Okay, I will make that change.
All right, thank you.
I'm not certain of that, but I think that might be an explanation.
I'll have to go and check when we get there, but I think it's a case of this being in both places. But
Okay.
let's see here. On page 4, the second paragraph under the section about committee discussion, there's reference to pull bits and splice bits. That should be bits with a P.
Did you say PITS, P-I-T-S?
Yeah, P-I-T-S rather than
Okay.
B-I-T-S.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I think it happens elsewhere in the document. I just flagged those two.
Okay.
All right, and then also on page 4, the third paragraph or third line from the bottom, there's a quote there that reads, "Conduit and scheduling will be installed via boring." I don't know what word was supposed to be there, but it's not scheduling. I would guess, I don't know what that is, but clearly scheduling was not the correct word.
Yes, you're correct. The thrust of the correction was the spelling of the word boring, because whatever was in there was not that word. The rest of the statement, as it was an original, should be fine.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, that's all I have, Sheriff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Derek. I want to refer to page 8. The bottom block of text on that page, the third point in that block ends with the word modular. That is not the word used. The word is monitoring.
Okay,
Page 9. Third bullet on page 9. With respect to the reference to Cordell 1979A, that is in a subscript alpha. Since there is only one reference to Cordell listed in the references cited, the alpha should be removed, or an additional reference to Cordell, if necessary, should be inserted into the references cited so that alpha and beta, if there is one, would make sense.
okay,
Same page, last paragraph, fourth line. The phrase could be does not seem correct at all. It seems like what I said was has been or been. Page 10, the bullet making reference to page 82, third line. The term is faunal bone, F-A-U-N-A-L, not funnel. Very last line on that page. A compound noun. Another dry, laid wall footer, not a leg. Page 11, the bullet with reference to page 90, third from the last line, ends in the word final. It should be faunal, F-A-U-N-A-L. The bullet with reference to page 110, second to the last line. I'll read it in context. It could be said that it is the Loreto Foundation, or etc. The bullet with reference to page 121, it is a plan view, P-L-A-N, as opposed to planned view. In the middle of that same paragraph, the word site leads the line, and it's spelled as though my failing vision, but it is intended to be the word S-I-T-E for site, archaeological site. Page 12, fifth paragraph. Excuse me, fourth paragraph, last line. The word conjugation is absolutely incorrect. Contribution would make sense in that context, and I believe that's what I said. Just out of curiosity, are we using voice recognition software to transcribe these things in some part?
Sometimes I use, I use the recording, what I can hear on the recording, and then I also use the YouTube video, and that also generates a transcript, and sometimes the transcript, and I compare to what I think I hear to the transcript, and I think that's what's happening.
I got it. I agree. That's probably what's happening. So sorry about all those, but that's
okay.
it.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did find one more on the page you were just on page 12. It is the second paragraph, second line. The two words during construction are repeated. During construction, during construction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Indeed they are. Thank you, Derek. We can have a motion.
I have one clarification question because I missed the first part of those
Go for
edits. So on page 1, the ARC case 4926, list approved. And I just want to make sure, did that get answered? Because I believe that was postponed.
Good question.
You believe it was, excuse me?
Postponed or withdrawn. Because if you go down on page 16, the motion failed.
Correct.
That's right.
I think it was withdrawn because we didn't want to do date certain.
There was one that was withdrawn before we voted. There was also one where we actually voted and voted no. I think this was the latter case.
Okay, this is all my fault because when we went through the agenda last time, I got out of order.
Oh, that's right.
And it is the case that the case numbers could have gotten conflated, confused, or otherwise transposed. At this point, without reference to the actual documents, I couldn't tell you which one's correct and which one's not.
I can offer that I can go back and check and make sure that the index matches or the actions match what was actually done in the minutes, done in the meeting.
Please do.
All right.
Mr. Chair, because of that, I would say that I would like to postpone the approval of these minutes until our next meeting.
I think that's very wise, members in.
And I
I'll
will make the
second that.
and I'll make the corrections prior to that meeting. That way you have
Thanks,
the.
Melissa. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Sure.
Beautiful. Okay, moved and seconded. Motion is to postpone. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So we have item D, matters from the floor. And anyone out there who wishes to raise a matter from the floor should signify by raising your digital hand or otherwise attracting the attention of one Carly Picarello.
I see no hands yet, but I do want to offer one thing before we go further. If anybody has any issues and you are watching the YouTube video and you want to connect, please use the call-in settings on the agenda.
Very good public service announcement.
Okay.
So having paused and hearing no indication of matters being raised from the floor, I think we should move on to item E on the agenda, which is old business. Case number 2022-4806. NV5, agent for PNM, requests approval of an archaeological monitoring plan for installation of 1,808 feet of electrical utilities along Camino del Norte in the Suburban Archaeological Review District. We have a staff report in front of us. Carly, anything to add or change on that?
No, Chair.
Okay, I will offer a critical change. The second sentence of the background and summary indicates the applicant is requesting approval of boring with monitoring of installation of the pull boxes and splice pits. The document I have in front of me speaks of trenching.
Thank you, Chair.
So if that's correct, we will proceed. Who is presenting on behalf of NV5?
That would be me if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you,
We
Antonio.
can hear you.
Okay.
We need you to be sworn in, sir.
Yes, sir. This is Antonio DeCunzo, by the way.
Okay. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Antonio DeCunzo, and my current address is 6200 Eubank Boulevard, Northeast, apartment 1425, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thank you.
All right,
yes,
Antonio, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, folks. Good to be here again. You may remember I presented a plan a while back at the last meeting in February, and based upon comments from Chair Eck as well as Member Pierce, I was asked to revise the plan. The revised plan is in front of you. The main revisions consist of there was some additional footage added to the footprint of the project, and that was one part. And then the next part, based upon the recommendation of Chairman Eck and Member Pierce, the client PNM is no longer boring the project, and they will open trench all 2,000 feet, 2,000 plus feet of the project area. And I believe, and also additionally a pre-construction survey will be conducted. I actually tried to do it last week. I was able to survey part of the area, but there was still quite a bit of snow along the south side of the road. So the survey will need to be completed. Informally, I can say that I didn't see anything on the part that was available, but obviously that's not official, as there was some snow on the south side. And I think those were the main changes. I also added some additional references and some research on the Old Spanish Trail, of which the proposed National Park Service shapefile, intersects the survey area. But the looking into it that I've done, I suggest raises some questions about its actual location. And I think that's about all I have, folks.
All right, thank you, Antonio. Committee members, Member Pierce.
Thank you. Yeah, so no real comments. Once the applicant switched from boring to an open trench, all of my concerns pretty much went away.
That's great.
As far as the Old Spanish Trail, yeah, I support Antonio's interpretation. That shapefile is a theoretical construct. I don't think there are any known on-the-ground traces of the trail anywhere near Santa Fe that I'm aware of. So it is definitely more theory than fact.
Okay. If that is all,
It is.
members in.
I just thank you for revising it and putting in the visual walking of the 50-foot buffer. I think that's great. And thank you to PNM for whatever reason deciding to trench, because we always get a lot more information with that. The neighbors might not be too happy, but they'll get over it. And I agree with, I was looking at the topo and trying to figure out if the Spanish Trail, there could possibly, no, it almost does a disservice to make a reference to that. I mean, you may diminish, because what happens to these reports, of course, then somebody picks it up and said, aha, there's no aha here. So yeah. I will leave it up to the experts of how that should be dealt with, but that's my only comment, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Dale. I just have two little things, and they are minor. I just wanted to point them out for future reference. On page 5, last paragraph, fourth line, indicating that the trench will not be any wider than, says 48 inches feet, so it won't be any wider than what?
I believe that should be just 48 inches, otherwise 4 feet, with the exception of where they have to put in the pole boxes, sorry.
Big trench.
All right. That is a massive bucket on the trencher.
I think it's 2 passes.
That's
Yeah,
sort of a
similarly
maximum.
on page,
it might actually be smaller. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Similarly on page 20, second paragraph, last sentence, it's the second to the last line. National Park Service, park is singular. And yes, there's a reason that that shapefile is what it is, because it was digitized from 1 to 250,000 quadrangles using basic assumptions about landmarks mentioned casually by journal keepers on the trail, and the fact that the line is in the right county in some places is kind of amazing. So thank you for all your additional labor on this, Antonio. It's a good deal. We're done. Motion?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for approval of 4806, for approval with the notations brought out by the board.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Let's see, Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you
We'll
for your
now move
time.
on. Thank you, Antonio. We'll move on to new business. Case number 2022-4922. Office of Archaeological Studies, agent for High Five Networks, requests approval of a monitoring report for approximately 142 feet of Comcast conduit installed on Water Street in the historic downtown Archaeological Review District. We've got your staff report. Carly, thank you. Anything to add?
I believe we have just a conflict in the staff report. We have a total of 143 that was trenched, and that may need to be 142. 142. I think we have an error there. What's that?
All right. That seems a minor enough error.
Splitting hairs, right?
All right. Is Karen Winning in attendance and ready to be sworn in?
She is, and I've just pushed the unmute button. Here, Karen.
Okay,
Yes,
Do
I'm
you-
here. Thank you.
thank you. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
3 Apache Plume Drive, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87508.
Thank you.
All right, Karen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Eck. Hello, everyone.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I can't seem to join with video. Okay, here we go. I don't have anything to add to this report. So I'm here for your comments.
All right, thank you. Committee, Member Pierce.
Well, Darren, I think I'm going to disappoint you because I don't have any comments.
Thank you.
All right, Member Zinn.
My only comment is I need a little education of what dissolved metal artifacts are.
That is basically metal that is just powder in the ground. It is so completely saturated that it's disintegrated.
It's not from being smelted or anything. It's just metal that's turned dust to dust, right? Something like
Exactly. Yeah.
that. Thank you for the education. I have no further comments.
All right. And thank you, Karen. I'm not going to offer any comments other than I appreciate the explanation of that dissolved term. So it's the case that it's just nothing but a bunch of oxide left behind after the metal itself is gone.
Right. Yeah, 'cause the
Exactly.
metal really is gone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And
I
I'll
get it.
clarify that in
So-
future text. So
It could
All
be
right.
good.
Well, thank you, everyone. We can have a motion.
I move for approval, Mr. Chair, of 004922 as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Aye.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
All right. We will move on to case number 2022-4923. Office of Archaeological Studies, Agent for High Five Networks, requests approval of a monitoring report for installation of approximately 2,785 feet of Comcast conduit at Zaffarano Drive and Cerrillos Road in the Suburban Archaeological Review District. Thank you for the staff report. Anything to add to it, Carly?
No, Chair.
All right, thank you. Karen, you're still here, you're still on, you're still sworn in. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Eck. I don't have anything to add to this report. Thank you.
All right. Members in.
I have no comments, sir.
Thank you. Member Pierce.
Just one. Your graphics are always so good. I can't resist the temptation to point out one mistake.
Okay.
So this is on page 24 of the report. It's your
Okay.
figure 4.8. The project area is way off to the right side of the map, so far off that part of it is off the page. So it would be good to recenter that map.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, which figure?
It's figure 4.8,
4.8.
the USGS Quad Map.
Oh, yes. Well, part of the project is off that map. So that quadrangle map, I could have stitched the adjacent quad to show that too. So in the future, I'll stitch the adjacent quad.
Thank you.
So the whole area is in there.
Otherwise, that's all I have. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Very good. I will not add any more to the list. We can have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of 004923 as submitted.
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Aye.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Case number 2022-4930. Jemez Mountain Research Center, Agent for Frank Schneider, requests approval of an archaeological survey report for the property at 1023 East Alameda Street in the historic downtown Archaeological Review District. We have a staff report. Carly, anything to add to that?
I have one item that was missed there. The last sentence of the background and summary, the last few words say, in order to fulfill testing requirements. That should say, in order to fulfill 2% testing requirement. The 2% testing requirement, rather. And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Carly. And who is present for Jemez Mountain Research Center? I'm assuming it's Dr. Oster.
Dr. Oster. Permitting panelist.
Yay. Elizabeth, you there?
That was a slow transition over to panelist. Here she comes, though.
Hello,
Dr.
I'm
Oster.
going to go ahead. I'll go ahead and swear you in. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You'll need to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We got a last minute invitation to join as panelists, so we clicked on that. We can't tell if you guys are actually seeing us or not.
No.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to, oh wait, here's start video.
Please do. I want to see your face, Elizabeth.
All right, Dale. Wait a second. We were there for a second. Okay, here we are.
Hi, folks.
Hey,
Hi. Will you both be speaking?
We're both speaking.
We're both speaking.
Okay. Then I will swear both of you in. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimonies you're about to give are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you. And when you speak, please state your name and address for the record.
Elizabeth Oster, PO Box 4759, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87502.
Thank
Mike
you.
Elliott, same address.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Oster and Mr. Elliott. The
Thank
floor is yours.
Well, we've conducted an archaeological reconnaissance of proposed development, I guess you would call it, on 1023 East Alameda. This property, as near as we can tell, has never had a building, a structure, an archaeological site on it throughout history. It's on the edge of an arroyo that comes down from the north. It's in the what used to be the floodplain of the Santa Fe River. The lot has been previously covered with several feet of fill to level it out and to grow a lawn behind an existing structure that is not part of this development. During our reconnaissance, all we saw were some 20th century discards that we think are secondary deposits, are the result of just trash disposal from the building just to the east. We have no reason to think there's any archaeological remains on the property. There's no indication from archival or historic map information that would indicate that the land of the tract has been anything other than possibly agricultural throughout its history. We realize that the 2% testing requirement would seem to apply here. We don't think it's necessarily the best way of obtaining subsurface information about this particular piece of land. We have asked and proposed that the committee consider allowing us to monitor the earth disturbing work on this piece of land while it's ongoing, and with full authority to stop the work in case anything of any import were observed. One of the bits of information we didn't have available at the time of the report was we now know that there will be about 4,000 square feet of the 8,825 square feet that will be disturbed to a certain extent through trenching or scraping, trenching for utilities and foundations, and leveling the site so that the property slopes down from east to west, and so it needs to be leveled out. If we monitor this work, we will get very good indications of what lies down as far as the trenching goes, which is 3 to 4 feet. There will be 170 feet of trenching that's 2 feet wide, 3 to 4 feet deep. That's for the utilities. And rather than put in hand testing and some arbitrary trenching, we thought that monitoring this actual construction work would be a more useful way of determining if there was anything below the surface in this particular tract. And so we're asking for a conditional archaeological clearance to be issued, so pending the results of the monitoring. We're happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you for that. committee. Member Pierce.
I was hoping you'd start with somebody else, so I wouldn't be on the hook. But, yeah, I appreciate that this probably is a low probability area, right? Disturbed, very little chance of original context. But I'm troubled by the idea of giving this exception because, you know, if we set the precedent now, why wouldn't every applicant try for it every time?
You betcha.
Well, they might have an actual reason in terms of a known archaeological site or previously known structure on a location. And as near as we can tell, there has never been anything there. We're 35 meters from the actual northern boundary of the historic district and the review district, which are the same boundary at this point. We've examined trenching 2% testing in several locations near this area. There has never been a significant find in any of these trenches are hand test units. So we think the probability is extremely low that we would find this. And I think I'm aware of a couple of instances where there have been exceptions to the 2% rule. As I understand it, work at the San Busco Center did not involve a 2% test, but involved monitoring of the trenching and other groundwork that was done there. This is a totally different situation. We're far to the east. It's in a floodplain. You know, I think there's a good reason for trying to examine more of the ground surface than just the 2%, because we wouldn't know where to start. It would be a random kind of hand testing process and trenching, and highly unlikely to actually, you know, find significant archaeological material.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that your argument in this case is well founded. But to be honest, I'm being a little selfish here. You know, if every applicant comes to us and makes their argument for why their project should be excluded and do monitoring instead, well, that means we have to sort through every one of those arguments and make a judgment call every time. It's a little easier for us just to say the code is the code.
Yeah.
So I'm still on the fence, but I'm going to defer to the other members, and then maybe we can circle back to it.
If I may also add, Derek, there's really quite a lot of fill deposited on this lot and has been over the years. I think that was pretty clear from the pictures in the report. So I mean, the trenching will allow us to see the native surface in a way that we haven't been able to. You know, we are archaeologists. We like to see archaeologists done. We have, you know, I mean, Santa Fe is our home, and this is a place where we like to see good work done. In this case, however, I think we will really learn more about the lot if we monitor the construction.
So just as a follow-up, if you're going to monitor the construction rather than completing the reconnaissance now, does that mean that there will be a formal monitoring report when this is over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it for me for now. We can have further discussion after the other committee members have chimed in.
Before we close too, Derek, I just wanted to say, we had some questions about, because this is for private property, private client, we wanted to make sure that we were following the appropriate protocols for submitting this report to the NIMCRIS. So we can talk about that at the end of our discussion.
Yeah, let's do that at the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Derek. You have a placeholder for further comment later. Members in.
Yes, I'm glad to see you guys in front of us today. I have some of the same concerns that Derek does, but I have a question, and I don't know if this is who this is for, but my understanding is that 2% is required to clear the entire site. So if you did not do 2%, we can clear the area of where the construction is. It's just that the owner would be still liable for further archaeology if they wanted to do additions and things. Is that true or not?
I don't know if that's a question
That, it sounds,
we can answer, but
It's for anyone can answer. Because the 2% is to clear the entire site instead of just the project, is my understanding. And so we could
right.
clear the
That's
project.
a question for, I beg pardon, since I can't see any of this, I'm just a voice on the telephone. I have to butt in.
Go for it.
That's a question that only staff and the city attorney can probably answer.
Okay.
I'm sure the committee members have opinions. So if we can sort of put a placeholder on that and hear from staff / attorney on that matter in a bit. Is there anything else, Dale?
No, that I just know that in previous projects we've, I think we're not going to force them to dig where they don't need to dig, but if we're not getting down to sterile soil, then have you really done the archaeology? So that's a question that's come up in previous submittals. So I think we have to be consistent, and I think that's what Derek is trying to say too, is we have to be consistent. When I sat on the H board, I would tell applicants this, I know you're going to do this really well, but it's the next person that comes in is not going to do it really well, and they are going to point to you and say, well, you let them do it. So that's the precedent thing is really big for these kinds of boards and commissions.
We do appreciate that. The trenching will go to native soil.
Okay.
For purposes of getting the house foundations and utilities in. Just to do the building.
Okay.
the trenching will cover about 3.8% of the entire lot. It's 170 feet by 2 feet. So it's actually a larger than 2% sample of the subsurface.
Okay, so that seems like that would clear the site, correct?
Well, except for the hand testing requirement is 18 square feet down to sterile soil, and since the fill is 3 to 4 feet deep, it's already sterile, or at least non-archaeological sterility. But we will get down to original ground surface by observing the trenching, and it should be about a 3.8% sample, I believe. The hand work will take time, cost money, I think not provide any useful information. I don't think if we found something that we could actually say that it belonged where it is, because it's fill dirt.
That's true. That's my only comments, Mr. Chair.
All right. So now it's my turn. First, it is within the bounds of a registered cultural property, which happens in this particular area to be co-equal with the bounds of the city's downtown historic archaeological review district. What makes that thing significant is a whole host of things, but amongst the things are the land use history of the parcel, the property, the area, the agricultural use of the land, the Asequias, and the settlement pattern that was in place up there in historic times and through the period of significance for the registered cultural property. One, I'm not 100% convinced, pending answer from staff and city attorney, that we actually have this as an option. Two, if we were to be able to do this, could all of that excavation be left open until such time as we got the report, so that there is an opportunity to visit and see what might be there? Then the maps of the Asequia de la Moraya and what is referred to as a lateral or more than one lateral, I'm unclear. I think I see one alignment that could be a lateral from the Asequia de la Moraya, coming down across the adjacent property and then crossing this property something on the order of 20 feet north of the street. The history of the Asequia de la Moraya is interesting because there were a boatload of Parciantes actually irrigating at the time of the 1919 hydrographic survey, and that is much reduced by the time of the 1977 hydrographic survey, reported in 1978. And it is the case that this thing that looks like it might be a lateral that leaves the main alignment of Asequia de la Moraya and goes in the fashion I described, south across the neighboring property and then west across this property, may be a reconfiguration of the Asequia de la Moraya sometime between 1919 and 1977. Because I note that in 77, the hydrographic survey report indicates that 0 of the Parciantes who were downstream of that particular point had been irrigating at that point in time. So it may be that what we have maps on this property is a variation of the Asequia de la Moraya, specific to a certain time period. It may indeed be a repurposing of a prior lateral or some sort of desagua that had been put in place. We don't know that because it doesn't seem to appear on previous maps. This arroyo that comes down from the north and essentially forms the limits at the northwest and west of this parcel is another potential desagua or hypothetical possible alternate route for the Asequia after the folks downstream were cut off. The map indicates that folks upstream are irrigating gardens and orchards and, quote, native grasslands. And that is indeed what the resident of this parcel, who had no rights that you pointed out, interesting. The fact that he didn't have rights didn't apparently stop him from doing things that ended up getting mapped by the hydrographic survey folks, because he had an orchard/garden and a patch of native grassland. And I find it interesting that that patch of native grassland is almost exactly where the purported pool was located, above the retaining wall that was put there to hopefully keep all that in place. So I think there is an indication that there is a pretty good likelihood that there is indeed buried archaeology on the property in the form of either an official realigned Asequia de la Moraya or a lateral that may or may not be official, or a desawa that may or may not have been mapped by anyone because, gee, who thought it was important? I don't know about that. But I would like to know. And it seems to me that if we had a good idea of the intended construction trenches, one could put a nice trench out there right now, exactly on one of those alignments. And I would suggest starting about 10 feet north of the driveway gate and going essentially what looks like on the plat as almost due north toward a single tree that stands alone near the north boundary of the property. And it seems to be well within the areas delimited by the T-posts as being slated for construction area. So I'm wondering why that wouldn't be a good idea to do it now, so we know all about what might be there. The handwork, okay, yeah, digging through 3 feet of fill would be no fun, but gee, I don't know if there is 3 feet of fill out there. Did somebody tell you that? If we punched a trench in and learned that there's a foot of fill, that puts a very different picture on the handwork that might occur. And the handwork that might occur, I think, could usefully take place in the vicinity of the north edge of said purported pool, which also would be near the north edge of the mapped irrigated natural grassland. Another to the south along that sort of eastern edge of the property could indeed encounter the Asequia / desawa / lateral in a sort of a minimally disturbed condition, because they're probably there still under this fill. If the fill caps it, I can't imagine that it would have erased the evidence of the Asequia or whatever this thing is. And then finally, the no-build area off to the west just appears to be on the other side of a gas line easement and may be reflective, as you pointed out, of the sort of settlement with squabbles with the neighboring property. And if things were filled the way you've indicated, that might be the area where the most fill is, because that is right next to the arroyo. But I note that you found evidence of the arroyo and its opening, its emission into the Santa Fe River in the form of a culvert coming under the street. And that culvert seems to be directly across from the property corner. I'm not certain of that because the angle on the photo is a little tricky. So right now, I just sort of rather know now instead of later, and then we'd be certain about what we're talking about, and then we'd be in a position to demonstrate that we have indeed done the 2% testing, and we would be consistent as other members have indicated. So would you like to react to that?
Well, I suppose, you know, that's a valid point of view. I am really not too certain that there's any evidence from 1978. I don't think that was really part of the Asequia de la Moraya. And I'm not sure how accurate you could consider that map to be. I believe it's kind of a hand-drawn, more of a sketch. But we do think, based on information that the that the landowner and the architect have provided, that there are many feet of fill placed on that lot. This was part of the leveling process before that other house was built. And the part up high where the pool was, I mean, there's probably 5 feet or more fill in there. That'll, I'm sure, be removed as part of the work for the house. But the culvert does not come from the north side of the street. The culvert is at the base of a storm drain that's in the street. So it's just a place where water has been collecting, we think possibly from the drainage in the arroyo. So it's not coming from across the street at all, other than it's flowing out into East Alameda and dropping down the storm drain into the culvert and thus the riverbed.
Ah, okay.
I have one other comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I did a project about 10 years ago at 1001 East Alameda, and the history of that property is pretty amazing. And as I recall, that it was originally over 20 acres that went all the way up to the headwaters of the gate irrigation cutoff is way north of here, way east of 1000. So I think all of this was really part of this original ownership. And again, I don't have that memory recall in my brain, but I do know that that project and the history of that involved quite a large piece. Number I remember is 20 to 24 acres, and most of it was east of 1001, and also went across the river. So it was quite big. So I think all of that needs to be taken into account. The history didn't start when this got subdivided into these little lots.
Yep, that litany of subdivision is one touched upon here. And it seems quite complicated when small pieces get parsed out for various different relatives, and that's a scenario in which I can easily imagine somebody told somebody that, oh yeah, you got water rights, and so somebody started irrigating, and then somebody in the form of the hydrographic survey folks came along and said, you don't have any rights.
I think that's what happened to
happens.
China for sure.
And they're correct about the Cerro Gordo was extensively widened and flattened, and they just pushed all that dirt down. So anything just south of Cerro Gordo does have a lot, because we had to build retaining walls like crazy to try to keep it back. But there's quite a bit of fill that was pushed down from Cerro Gordo.
Yep,
you can also see in the, sorry.
I was just going to say, I was up to my neck in some of that stuff that came down. And it looks to me, just being a country boy, but it looks to me like when they did that, they actually plugged the Asequia de la Moraya, and people had to do some significant work to clean it back out. And it ended up on the adjacent, immediately adjacent 40 or 50 feet of property downhill, closer to the river. And so that's probably also the case in this area, but that being 90 feet away, not sure that anybody was transporting Cerro Gordo material that far.
The two places,
it'd be nice to know.
The two places on the lot where you can really see the, the sort of fill deposition are in the area that Michael mentioned earlier, where you have the little buildup for the little circular rock wall that the next door neighbors, when they owned the lot, had put in a little pool for their grandchildren. And then also in the photos along the coyote fence, particularly along the western boundary of the parcel, cobbles are placed there essentially to keep the fill from washing out into the arroyo there. They're about the biggest rocks that you could still call cobbles. And they're keeping it in, essentially.
Yep.
So what we felt is that in the project work that's been done very nearby, not really talking about Patrick Smith Park, which is across the street, but on the adjacent lots that were originally part of the same property use history way back when, that in all the work that's been done, what people have found is remains or worked on remains of the Asequia de la Moraya. And the actual Asequia kind of wraps around this property. And if it was crossed at all by laterals, it's what I would refer to as an informal lateral, so not something that would have features. But as we noted in our conclusion, we do think that although we think that the potential for finding significant materials, culturally speaking, is minimal, we don't think that it's, you cannot say that there is no possibility, again, because of the use history. And so that is why we did think that actually doing this as an approach for archaeological monitoring would give us a better sense of what was going on that piece of property than doing just the 2% test. So that was our conclusion. We thought it made the most sense.
All right. I think I've covered all of the stuff I flagged in my copy of the report. So I don't think I have any more particular details to home in on. Go back to other committee members. Member Pierce, do you have something to add at this point?
Well, just to follow up, I guess. You say that much of this property is truck infill, and we have every reason to probably believe your professional opinion on it. But how often do we hear that? It's almost every case. So I don't see anything that makes yours unique that would warrant giving this workaround when we have been holding everybody else to a different standard. So again, the precedent issue really bothers me. I mean, the 2% testing is your opportunity to prove that the soil is truck infill and not native soil. And if we haven't done that yet, you put us in an awkward position having to evaluate your opinion rather than demonstrated fact.
So one question we had when talking about, internally about where we would put things and, where would we put hand excavation units versus a trench, were we to pursue that course. In the ordinance, the way that it is worded, it makes it sound like you need to do a handwork first and then trench. I'm not sure if it's intended to be that way or if it's just because you have to have sentences that have nouns and verbs and follow a specific order. But in this case, if I were to do handwork, I think I'd want to put in trenches first. To me, it would
I
make more
appreciate
sense to have
that
a profile
opinion.
of sondage.
And that is a very good observation. And it is the case that at least half of our applicants do the trenches first and do the handwork second, in spite of this country boy telling them you ought to do the handwork first in most cases so you know what you're seeing in the trenches. But given the description of introduced fill, and given what we think we know about the history of this parcel, I think in this case, I would be willing to agree that you should do a trench first and handwork second.
Yeah, no objections from me, Mr. Chair. That sounds perfectly reasonable in this case.
That sounds made too, Mr. Chairman.
So I have a question. If the trenching in fact reveals absolutely nothing of interest, is the handwork still going to be required, or it would be kind of hard to select a spot just for some random scraping and screening, and when we have no indication there's going to be anything.
Well, numerous people have referred to what the ordinance says here, and I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but as I recall, it says there will be 2% tested and 18 square feet will be by hand. And I bless whoever said earlier that it should go to sterile soil, because unless it does, it hasn't been fruitful. I think the east edge of this property is your most likely place for reasonable depths of hand excavated unit to reach demonstrably sterile deposits without going to crazy depths.
I think what Michael's thinking about is if you start with sterile soil, I mean, just thinking about trenches and dirt and profiles and all those sorts of things that we archaeologists love so much. If it's, I guess in thinking about this, and this was one of the things that made me feel that this recommendation of monitoring instead and getting more bang for the buck would be better, is if it's just fill. I mean, at some point you just stop because you're getting nothing, but then who knows, maybe another meter down, there could have been something. I mean, that is the thing, that's the part, I'm stating this awkwardly, but that's the part that I have a hard time envisioning, is in some cases, I could easily see if there's anything to be seen at all, like just a worn out V shape of an informal ditch that was authorized or unauthorized. You could still miss it in the hand units, because it's, you know, if you just get sterile, you have to stop. That's why, to me, it seemed like using a backhoe would give us more bang for the buck and uncovering more area.
Well, which
Mr.
is
Chair.
exactly why. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to follow up because I do have the code up in front of me. And it does require the minimum 2% and the 18 square feet of hand excavation, but it does not specify an order to that. So there's nothing in the code that would prevent you from doing trenching first. And my personal opinion is, if you do the trenching and, you know, it's obvious all fill, all sterile, that 18 square feet could consist of going no farther than clearing the detritus. You know,
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Could I trouble you to give me the citation to that?
Oh,
section?
sure. Let me see where I am here. So 14.3.13 C4.
Little
Okay.
I.
Yeah.
And I think that wording actually does give an order.
Yes.
I'll state it out. Test excavations encompassing a minimum of 2% of the total lot area. At least 18 square feet shall be dug by hand, after which further excavations
Oh, it does. Yes.
may be by mechanical equipment. Excavation shall proceed to a depth where no archaeological features or artifacts are encountered, or until the maximum square depth or maximum depth to which excavations can safely be made.
I stand corrected. Yeah, I missed the word after. which, yeah, so I mean, I appreciate the applicant's point here is that, you've got a little 1x1 test unit, and how far do you go down before you give up? Because, if it's got 4 feet of fill on it, does that mean you go down 4 feet plus whatever else you need to get the sterile below that? It's tricky.
It depends on if the fill is sterile, because fill, by definition, is not native to the location, and therefore, in one sense, it really couldn't be construed as sterile per se. And every fill deposit I've seen in Santa Fe has had archaeological materials in it, be they redeposited from somewhere else, who knows. But again, if fill has archaeological materials in it, such as a brick observed in recent memory at the bottom of a hand unit, it's not sterile. Fill is fill. It has stuff in it. And so one isn't done until you find native deposit, the Santa Fe River gravels, or 20 centimeters of clean water-laid sand. Well, okay, we're at the bottom of anything that could hold culture in this riverine environment. Okay, we can hang our hat on that. We have a demonstration. We have an observation. We have something that we can interpret. As Member Pierce said earlier, we kind of need to focus on the facts first.
Yeah, going over the code again, I think the applicant is making a perfectly reasonable request based on good scientific evidence, but I just don't see that we have the latitude in the code to grant the request.
Yep. I agree, Mr. Chair.
Okay, committee. It seems like we're reaching a consensus. Our committee member is disposed to make a motion.
I hope Mr. Pierce is, because I'm not.
Before you do that, I just want to let you know, Chair, that there is one attendee with their hand up.
So,
Excellent. Then this is a rare event. We should have them identify themselves, and if they need to be sworn in.
And they have been unmuted. Gabriel Brown.
Okay, I will go ahead and swear you in, Mr. Brown. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gabriel Brown. My address is let's see, that's the project address. My address is 7604 Old Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87505.
Thank you.
It does seem like the committee, my name is Gabriel Brown. I'm an architect. I designed the home involved. I'm also a general contractor, and I'm planning to build the home. This is not your problem particularly, but this project has been delayed beyond reasonable bounds because of appeals in the historic design review process that feel unfair and at any rate, the project has suffered already, and so we frankly are looking for an expeditious way to move forward here. We really appreciate the work that Dr. Oster and Mr. Elliott have done, and we're pleased with their findings. It seems to me that trenching 3.8% of the property and excavating almost 50% of the property down to the riverine native rock that underlies all of the fill under their supervision is going to give us a lot more information, going to give you and all of us a lot more information if there are cultural resources there than would doing 2% in more or less a random fashion. I realize that that's the code, and obviously we're willing to live with that if that's the desire of the committee. But it seems like a better offer is on the table, and I wanted to say that. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate you weighing in. It's always good to hear from folks outside the usual cast of characters. Just for the record, the 2% testing in no way, shape, or form in anybody's mind is intended to be random. It's intended to be useful. It's intended to be directed. It's intended to be informed by what we think we know about the piece of property going in. That's why we spent so much time earlier talking about the fact that there had been no buildings mapped on this property. Therefore, we know we're not expecting foundations and domestic features. So what we do know is that we have a map that shows us that there is a ditch of whatever configuration, purpose, design, or dimension that crosses this property. That is the thing that it makes sense for us to try to learn about. And I suggest that the most expeditious way to learn about that is to dig a backhoe trench next week along the alignment I grossly suggested, which is pretty much right up the middle of the property. Unless you can define the alignment of a trench you already want for construction purposes, I'm perfectly happy to have that trench excavated. But it needs to start, as I said, about 10 feet from the property line, because that's just outside the 7-foot easement for utilities. It's just outside the limit of the Santa Fe River floodplain as defined on the plat, and it has every chance of intersecting this ditch almost immediately if one starts at the south end and goes north. I'm a practical person. If I drive a backhoe in there, I would want to start at the north end and dig my way back south. So that being said, that could happen next week, and we would have the information necessary to move forward. And I am perfectly happy to move forward on the basis of new information presented to staff in time for discussion at the next meeting, which would be the first week of April.
April 7th.
So are you suggesting that we postpone to a date certain or approve with that? But we need the information, so we can't do anything until we have that information.
Yeah, we need to have information. And so I think I'm becoming less and less enamored of any approvals contingent on anything. I want to see it demonstrated. I want to see it documented. I want to see it presented to the committee, because I do not want to put city staff in the position of trying to figure out how to satisfy what we've said and asked for versus what an applicant may provide. The staff are not empowered by the ordinance to make those decisions. We allow them to do things that are within their purview, but I don't think stacking this on top of staff as a condition of any approval would be appropriate.
Well, I agree.
Agreed, Mr. Chair.
So I would move, Mr. Chair, for postponement to the next meeting for the archaeologist to perform the additional trench that you have suggested, which may resolve all of our questions about this site.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
and Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. And Dr. Oster and Mr. Elliott, thank you for bringing us forward. I certainly appreciate your observations and your recommendations, but I think it carried us to a place where we do not have the power to go.
Mr. Chair, If I could just offer some advice, whenever an applicant is seeking an exception to the rule, it's always probably a good idea to come to us with a matter from the floor beforehand to get our consensus opinion rather than going to the formal, here's my report, we're ready to move phase. This could have been presented to us a month ago and say, would this be acceptable to you or not? And we wouldn't be in this fix.
Good point, and thank you for that recommendation.
We appreciate the recommendation. We actually wouldn't have been able to do that, but we understand that that can be helpful in some instances. So I just want to clarify, our plan would be to start with mechanical trenching, and that would not be a problem with respect to the ordinance. Is that correct?
Well, I said I was willing, and I had observed that a goodly portion of our applicants already do it without asking
Okay.
us. And in this case, you have an excellent reason for doing it in that order. And so I think we should proceed on the basis of that knowledge and do things the way it makes logical sense in the case at hand.
Okay. The one other question I had, and I had mentioned earlier, this is probably a question for Derek and Carly, but in terms of getting reports, we submitted digitally to the city. We did get an IMCRIS number, an IMCRIS activity number, and we did include an IF with our report. And we're presuming that we would upload a finalized copy of any report to the NIMCRIS. We're wondering is that how we should proceed? So I didn't know if the city needs to be involved in that part of the process. We also didn't know if you needed a printed copy to be over at ARMS.
Sorry, that's my dog going crazy. It is technically, I suppose, the city's responsibility to get a copy to us, but we certainly appreciate it whenever you do send directly to us, and we can accept a digital PDF copy.
Okay.
We have started doing so pretty extensively because of COVID, and I'm certainly happy to do it in this case as well.
Sure. Carly, do you want a printed copy of the report?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So what I will do then is we will upload to the NIMCRIS. We will upload a finalized copy of the report. We will also, Carly, to you, and I can copy Nicole as well, of a finalized copy of the digital copy of the report. And we can bring over a printed copy of the report to ARMS. Unbound, I'm presuming that's how you'd want it, Derek?
Unbound is preferred, yeah, if you do give it a hard copy.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. We really appreciate it. And we will be talking to you very soon.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Almost.
All right. That's it for new business, administrative matters, and communications.
None from staff today?
All right. Matters from the committee. You
I
don't
have-
have anything?
I have one question. I think this is for Carly and Frank. I just had a question about, I was reading through the ordinance about the terms of our appointments. And while I know it's stated as 2 years, I've never heard of anybody actually being reappointed. It's just like you just keep coasting along until you fall off the table. I don't know if there's a formal reappointment that's necessary, but seems like that full membership in an approved manner is very important to the preventing somebody coming in and saying all the decisions we made over the last so many years is not valid because we weren't statutorily compromised, the right people comprised. So that's just my question.
I'll answer that. So what, with the appointment of a new member, which I think will have an application, our application hopefully will be in this next packet, or an application to be listed will be in this next packet. When that happens, when this next recommendations, the recommendation comes from me for reappointments, and then I see where the last appointments have taken off, and then you have, however, whenever the last time you were appointed, I have to find that documentation, and then note that you have served so many terms, and then see where your term is right now. And then give that to the mayor for a recommendation, so that, Dale, you might be at the end of a term and going into a new term, and Derek might be, Member Pierce may be in the middle of a term, because even though you weren't reappointed last time, you might have served multiple terms. And so
Yeah, I think it's been several. Yeah.
Yeah. So that gets documented in this memo.
So that process is taking place behind the scenes, really.
Yes. And so with that one memo, whenever this new board appointment happens, if this one happens, then it'll all happen together on one city council agenda, to the mayor, and then one city council agenda.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for raising that question, Dale, because we always know what we don't know, and what we don't know is how things actually work. And like Derek, I'm pretty sure that it's been 6 years since I heard anything about terms and appointments and, gee, are you still interested in serving? So we're way out on that limb that Dale alluded to, and we'd like to avoid any strangeness if that limb is not a good place to be.
So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of everybody, including the YouTube, the many hundreds of people watching this YouTube, that we are on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carly is, somebody is.
Yes.
That's all I have.
All right,
Ideally,
thank
this
you.
would happen at the beginning of a year, but
Oh, yeah. Well, I understand the staggering and the rotation and that kind of stuff for sure. I just didn't, we never see that in any kind of minutes or staff reports. So it's happening in the background. I just wanted to make sure that is true.
yes, Member Sun.
I have one item also. I likely will not be able to make the April 7th meeting. So you might do a quick query to make sure we still have a quorum.
Thank you.
I should be able to make it.
And Chair Eck and I will.
Yep. If I'm still on this side of the side,
I am.
I'll be here.
Oh, and the next hearing is one of the recurring hearings. By adding this hearing, it incurred the new Zoom presets that are required, which we now know are problematic. We will go back to our usually scheduled program the next hearing, happily.
All right. And hopefully Member Wands will have new hardware, phone or something.
I will check in with Member One.
We'll send her a princess phone. She can call it.
Oh, that's treading on dangerous territory, I think.
I know, I should back off right now. All right.
All right, that's it for matters from the committee. We're down to item I on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
There's a margarita waiting.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
Member Zinn,
Yes.
Chair Eck.
Aye.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks all.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.